Pay close attention. What you are seeing today is fulfilling Bible prophecy.
Welcome to YPN News, bringing you news as it relates to Bible prophecy. Well, Jeff, in this segment of YPN News, it looks like we don't have much joyous news to talk about.
Not at all, Katan. In fact, the Savior gave us this prophecy. He said that when iniquity would abound, you would see the love of many grow cold. And that's exactly what we're seeing in these articles. We started off talking about 5 former New Orleans police officers are about ready to find out their punishment for their role in a deadly shooting on the Danzinger Bridge in 2005. Now, in the days following Hurricane Katrina, 5 New Orleans police officers played a role in gunning down unarmed civilians on the Danzinger Bridge and then covering up the incident. Now, last fall, the officers were convicted of numerous crimes in federal court, and tomorrow they're about to be formally sentenced.
Wow. Robert Jenkins, a legal analyst, had this to say to a WDSU Channel 6 news reporter. It's going to be a sad day for NOPD because these are going to be some very, very long sentences.
A jury ruled that former officers opened fire on the bridge in early September of 2005, an incident that injured 6 and left 2 people dead. A federal judge, Kurt Engelhardt, is expected to sentence those 4 officers to at least 30 years in jail.
Well, now if you look at the numbers, we're looking at a life sentence, meaning they'll never walk out of jail unless, of course, an appeal, Jenkins said. And a likelihood of an appeal, in my opinion, is very slim. The 5th former officer convicted, Arthur Kaufman, a former homicide detective who was convicted of covering up what really happened on the bridge. Now, he faces a lighter sentence than the other 4.
Jenkins went on to say he's going to get jail time and it's going to be substantial, in my opinion. Now, last week, attorneys for the convicted police officers asked Judge Engelhardt to delay the sentencing due to comments made by former federal prosecutor Sal Perricone. The judge denied that request. Perricone made negative online remarks under an alias about some of the officers and the case during the trial. Now, Arthur Kaufman, the only former officer free on bond, he could be taken into custody tomorrow.
Well, you know, it's just kind of amazing that the sad part that they mentioned in this article is that these officers are going to be getting some very long sentences. Well, what about the victims?
That's like the true sad part.
That's right. And what led these officers to do what they allegedly did. Now, the love continues to grow cold, as is evident from this next report. Robert Bales, a 38-year-old U.S. soldier and father of 2 from Ohio, who was serving in Afghanistan, has recently been charged with killing 17 civilians early last month, 9 of them being children. The victims were either shot, stabbed, or burned. Staff Sergeant Bales is now in a U.S. military jail.
Due to the extreme nature of the crime, villagers and Afghan President Hamid Karzai aren't buying the notion that Bales acted alone. President Karzai stated in a recent statement, "In 4 rooms people were killed, children and women were killed, and then they were all brought together in one room and put on fire. That," he said, "one man cannot do."
General Sher Mohammed Karim, the Afghan Army Chief of Staff, said, "I'm guessing he was helped by someone, whether one person or 2 persons." Now, according to the report that was given, on March 11th, just after midnight, Staff Sergeant Bales set out on foot from a military base south of Kandahar to 2 Afghan villages to commit these alleged crimes. The first Western journalist to reach the scene was struck with the claim that more than one killer was involved.
One family member of several of the victims said, "They came into my rooms and they killed my family, my 2 sons, my nephew, my mother, who were sleeping in that room." Also, an 8-year-old named Normanak was shot in the leg by one of the soldiers, but she also claims that there were other people there.
She said, "One entered the room and the others were standing in the yard, holding lights. My mother was screaming, and he held a gun to her head, and my father said, 'Leave her alone,' and he shot him right there." Now, Afghan guards on duty that day said that Bales was the only one to return to the base.
Bales has made no confession. Staff Sergeant Bales has already served 3 tours in Iraq and suffered a head injury while there. Doctors will determine if he's mentally competent to stand trial. America has paid relatives $50,000 for each dead civilian and $11,000 for each of the injured.
Sounds more like an insult than recompense.
It's sad when a price is set on someone's life.
That's right. Yeah. Now, of course, the Afghan people and its government aren't satisfied with these measures, and they want U.S. troops confined to their base by next year.
Well, we now turn to our field correspondent, Larry McGee, who is reporting on the state of economy in Greece. And Larry, we know that if Greece isn't listening to what Yusra Hawkins has been saying, things aren't getting better. What can you tell us?
That's right, Jeff. And as proof of that, the streets of Athens burned with flames again this week as scores of protesters exhibited their discontent with the Grecian government by unleashing Molotov cocktails and hurling stones. As the crowd began to swell and the police attempted to calm them, there was little they could do to stem the turmoil. Nearby, candles illuminated a memorial erected in memory of a pensioner whose suicide was the catalyst for this week's unrest. The 77-year-old gentleman who shot himself in broad daylight right outside the parliamentary building located in the center of the city is the latest casualty symbolizing the hardships of the Grecian economy. And his death was quickly mourned with the shrine of candles and messages, one of which begged the question, who will be the next victim? The retired pharmacist who was dependent on his pension left behind a family, and his sense of hopelessness is one felt by many others in Greece as well. In his suicide note, the pensioner wrote, "The government has annihilated any hope for my survival, and I could not get any justice. I could not find any other form of struggle except a dignified end before I had to start scrounging for food from the rubbish." In the first few months of this year, Greece's suicide rate rose by 40%. Last month, however, Greece actually secured its bailout, but only after agreeing to drastic cuts in tax increases to which many citizens feel they are the unfair targets. To quote one citizen, "As a Greek, I am truly shocked. I am shocked because I see that the government is destroying my dignity. They mock me as a person, and the only thing they care about is bank accounts. They don't care about anything else." Sadly, the future for Greece doesn't seem to hold much promise for improvement. 1 in 5 Greek citizens are unemployed. Almost half of those under 25 are without work, and life today for many in Greece is simply unbearable. For YPN News, I'm Larry McGee. Gatan, Jeff, back to you.
Thanks for those articles, Larry. Jeff, it's interesting the extremes people will go to find relief for their oppression. In fact, we can see that it looks like people there in Greece, but all over the world, they don't find any hope to their problems today.
It's sad that they don't know that there is a solution to the problems that they face.
That's right.
Continuing in our articles, Livonia police are investigating the scene of a gruesome double murder-suicide. Wednesday morning, 19-year-old Brian White entered the home where his 17-year-old ex-girlfriend lived with her family. Police say she had recently broken up with Brian White, which sparked some extreme rage. He killed her mom, 42-year-old Angela Staperfine, and the girl's current boyfriend, 19-year-old Jacob Burns, with an axe.
Somehow, the 17-year-old girl survived. She called 911 after police say White shot himself in the head. Friends of the Stevenson High School student and her family are in shock.
One friend of the victim couldn't believe this had taken place. He said, especially to these people, out of all people, it's a tragic.
Wow. I could definitely see that outcome being a lot different had they all been taught the peaceful solution. Well, sadly, the carnage continues as we close out this segment of news with 7 dead and 3 wounded after a shooting in the small California religious university. And Oakland police say they have the suspect in custody. Oikos University in Oakland, California is where this latest tragedy has left residents and school officials, as well as the attendees alike, asking themselves and each other, why?
Lee Cohen from CBS News reported that the shootings that took place was believed to be the result of one lone gunman and that the Oakland police, as we've said, have the suspect in custody. School officials believe that the suspect was a former student.
Now, witnesses say that they heard at least 30 shots in rapid succession. One student of the university said that she heard gunshots and a woman scream. Police carried out the dead and laid them outside on the ground as the SWAT team swept through the building looking for more people desperate to get out.
A mile away from the school at a shopping center, police detained a man there calling a possible suspect. One woman who was interviewed, who is also employed at the university, was left speechless in light of the devastating events. Although she said little, you could see that she was still in shock, and you could see the extreme sadness and terror that she experienced because of the loss of lives.
Yeah. Well, you know, the thing is with these articles that we just covered here, it's easy to look at the perpetrators or the people who actually committed these alleged crimes and say that they're the cause of them. But it really goes back to a system that has trained people to reject the laws that would actually bring peace.
A system that doesn't teach them how to practice self-control, which is controlling your thoughts, emotions, and actions, and a system that doesn't teach them to have any care or concern for life.
A total lack of respect and value for everything that's living is what's bringing our world down today. But there is a solution.
Stay tuned for Yishra Hawkins, who will give you the solution to all these problems and many more. For all of us here at YPN News, I'm Jeffrey Heimerman.
And I'm Katan Alexander.
Thanks for joining us.